Hello, welcome to Bourbon Bartender. I'm Auri Rahimzadeh, and I'm a software engineer and a bartender. I am super excited for this installment of the Meet the Masters series. In this round, we've got Jason Fruits, the Master Distiller of Old 55. They're based out of Newtown, Indiana. I've known Jason a really long time. He's a great guy. He's so much fun to listen to. So they started only a few years ago in Newtown as a farm to bottle operation. And they've already won a number of awards, including Indiana Bourbon Distillery of the Year, 2 years running, so 2021 and 2022. If you're from the Indy area, you're probably already familiar with their sweet corn bourbon, 100% sweet corn. It's very unique. They're the only people who do it. And that's what really put them on the map. But they've really grown up. So through Jason and his family's leadership, they now have a bottled and bond bourbon. They've got whiskey. They've got full proof. And their single barrel offerings are so popular, they're sold out for the next few years. I think he was saying like 2026 may be the first time that they'll be able to do single barrels again, because that's how spoken for they are. So you're going to learn about that. You're going to learn about their business. You're going to learn about their process during the interview. I hope you enjoy it, and here we go. Cool. All right. So this is exciting. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely.
So, yeah,
always good to have you, man.
Yeah.
So
ask whatever questions you want. You know, I'm gonna.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
that's what I say.
So here we are. Let's see here. So I've been having a lot of fun with trying to figure out some of the questions, because you're an upstart and you're distributed where now?
So Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky. What are we at? 42 states online. Oh, wow. We do some business overseas, so we're in 4 provinces of Canada, and then a little bit of business in China and Japan. Oh. It's all hard to keep up with now because just the last 3 years have been crazy. So,
wow. I'm going to China and Japan like in the next month.
You won't find it. Like, it's such small amounts, you know what I mean, that's going to specialty. It's like sweet corn, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like people are paying atrocious amounts for, which we're more than happy to sell to them. So,
sure.
That's good.
I can bring it as gifts, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can be like, check this out. This is so good.
Oh, yeah. So
this will be fun.
That's awesome.
Then you've been around for, what, 4 years now? 5?
So we started in 2013, actively distilling in 14.
Oh, okay.
So we're almost 10 years. In January, it will be 10 years of like super serious distillation. So where we were hammering away, you know what I mean? So we went to bourbon right away, so it was always we were always waiting, you know what I mean? So we released 2-year-old bourbon, a straight 2-year-old, was as young as we ever did, but bottle and bond is kind of our thing now. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get to where that is our minimum labeling for almost everything we release. 100 proof 4-year-old.
Got it.
Just because I don't know, it's a great. Well, it's a cool, that bottled and bond labeling is neat, and that it is, you can't fake it. Does that make sense? If you make I didn't source it, you know what I mean? And we don't, farm to bottle, we do all that stuff. So, that's kind of the cool part about bottled and bond.
Yeah, it speaks truth to distilling.
I like that. You know what I mean? Exactly. That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, you can quote me on that.
Yeah, there we go.
So what's the oldest now? What's the...
Oldest, I mean, so most of our bib stuff is like 4.5 years old before it really goes into bottles. Does that make sense? So it's like, by the time it comes up out of the basement and we get to, where we're ready to bottle, it's 4.5 years old. I have, with that 30 gallon proprietary barrel and that basement, I start to see a little bit of, and this is all my opinion, right? So it's, but I'm starting to see a little bit of over oaking because that smaller barrel at 5+ years of age. So we're really kind of in this niche of like 4 years is the sweet spot, which works out perfectly. You know what I mean? So, so we're making, I say this like the layman's term, easy way to put it is like we're making better bourbon faster than everybody else. We just spend so much money to do that. Does that make sense? That 30 gallon barrel cost
30 gallons crazy.
Yeah, it cost, twice as much as like Kentucky cooperage, like a traditional 53 gallon. Our inputs are more expensive. We're taking that teeny tiny hard cut, so I'm wasting so much. You know what I mean? Like, so we just really had this niche process that, look at the awards is working pretty well. You know what I mean? Yeah, right? I mean, the product speaks for itself, and my dad really gets credit for all that, because really from the beginning, I wanted to make the best thing, and my dad fully was vested in that, was like, I agree. So even though he doesn't drink, he's never had a sip of beer or liquor in his life, he was like, he was behind that all the way. And then he gave me the resources and all the things to make that happen. You know what I mean? So he really gets credit for all this. I'm just the idiot that made it work eventually. So, yeah.
Well, it's a cool story.
It is a cool story.
I know on the tour you describe it, in more detail. We're not going to get into it on this video. Yeah. Maybe we should do a follow-up at some point.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's always interesting, like, see, starting up.
So Dad said this to me, my grandma's, 90th birthday was like 3 months ago, and we were having pizza in here in the tasting room, and him and I went and got pizza, and he said something to me, because when we first started, like with consultants and everything, everybody was like, you have to have a story. You got to have this story. I was just kind of like, I don't know. I'm kind of a rebel anyway, so I was like, it is definitely a thing. Don't get me wrong. Like, and we market by word of mouth and do other things, but I was always just like, if you just make the best stuff, like, it'll kind of come. And then my dad, just to hear my dad, almost 10 years later, be like, we didn't have a story, and now we kind of have a really cool story. You know what I mean? Because we just. I don't know. I guess maybe this is my recommendation. Like, if you just go after something like purely, like just from a pure heart, and like just trying to do the best thing possible, which is not always possible, by the way. Like, once again, I always say this. Can I curse on here? Because I have a horrible.
Yeah, it's YouTube.
Well, I always say this. I'm like the world's biggest spoiled asshole, and I never knew it. You know what I mean? And that, like, I was ridiculously fortunate to be able to have the grandparents that I have and the parents that I have, and then like a dad that was like basically like, you can make this happen, and I trust you to do it. Like, hands off, go. Yeah. And like, there's a lot of failure in that. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I had the barriers to fail in. You know what I mean? Where I could really and the ability to chase quality at no expense. You know what I mean? Which is, pretty cool. Pretty cool, and you see the results of that. And like I said, he really gets credit for that. It's pretty much 100% him. So, yeah.
Woo, go team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Go family.
I tell people, we're only third generation. Both sets of my grandparents told me stories of, like, in the mid 60s, early 70s, of like my aunts and uncles on both sides, and my parents like almost starving to death because we were that poor. You know what I mean? And now, we're it's different. Yeah, it's just how fortunate, how much of the American dream is right here. That's what I always say. Like, this is what's cool when people invest in you, like my parents and my grandparents did in me and my siblings. Like, it's pretty neat. Which is that's what I love the most about this place is I get to invest back. I am thankful, but now I get to invest in my kids and my great grandkids someday, and like all this, and it's like you realize that all that. Somebody actually told me who this was the other day, and I've been just brought this up so much in the last 2 years just because of all of our success, and I laugh like it's Warren Buffett said, like, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. True. I joke. I'd like to, I think I'd like to argue with Warren Buffett on that a little bit. Like, work is work. Does that make sense? Like, this is an enormous amount of work that me and my siblings and my parents do, but it all means something. Does that make sense? Like, the work always, there's a lot of, when you make a mess, or there's, shop vacuum to, or all the things that it's just, it's just work. Like, there's days that aren't, rainbows and unicorns out here, but it's always for a purpose. Does that make sense? And that's what means something. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, because I get to see it. And that is, once again, all because of, crazy, amazing Americans I get to call mom and dad and grandma and grandpa. You know what I mean? So pretty cool. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, you get to follow that passion.
Exactly.
And that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, so here you've started a distillery, with all this assistance from your family and support, which is great, and all the cool success, and we don't have it on the table, but all the different metals. Yay.
Yep.
So let's say someone else wants to follow their own passion as well. Whether they've got the same support system or not. What advice would you give those wanting to start a distillery? Is it like, well, hey, you've been lucky. Is it like the restaurant business where, hey, if you want to make $1 million in the restaurant business, start with $2 million?
Yeah, exactly. That's hilarious.
What would you tell them?
I think, because I get asked this infrequently, but frequent enough that I kind of have like my immediate go-to answers. But, I think the answer is, and so you kind of have to understand, I came at this, so my dad is just like, he's Jesus. He's just the greatest dude on the planet. Infinite forgiveness, infinite patience, and he would be shaking his head no if he was here right now. But I mean, to me and to my siblings and everybody, I don't know how he does it. And like this affair started as me just trying to help my dad. I always joke, and you've heard me say this before, if you would have told me in my late teens, early 20s that I'd be back in Newtown, Indiana, I'd punch you in the mouth. Right. I was never, ever coming back. And I've joked my dad has now weaseled us all back to Newtown, which is incredible. I mean, Newtown's a great little town. It's just tiny. And I just wanted to get out as fast as possible. And that's just life. And, a lot of this started as just business. So that was my background. And I was just like, I wanted to be able to help my dad. He wanted to diversify. And I was like, it was business. This is a way to take the corn that our family handles at the elevator and basically commoditize that into a product at the end and make more margin. It's simple business. And I always joke, like at the end, and you will appreciate this, like I fell into love with distilling because of the nerdiness of it. I mean? Like all the detail, and I was like, so it just kind of fell into there. I was like, this totally fits my attention to detail, my, like all the things, like I can make these products mine. I mean? Like I can really put my, heart and soul into this, and it's my expression, because if my siblings make bourbon, it's different than my bourbon, or, what I mean? Like we have these, so it's very cool that way. So my recommendation for how to start, probably would have been my answer would always be it was always kind of from like a business sense, I mean? I think that's important. Like in any venture that you need to do, I think you always need to have a competitive advantage. And, my competitive advantage here is my family, I mean? And this legacy that they have, we're vertically integrated. We're completely.
And you have the corn.
Well, exactly.
Right? I mean, you already have the product that you need.
That's what I'm getting at. So we're literally completely vertically integrated. So whether it's from the acreage that is owned by my family all the way up to the elevator to the distillery, we do it all from top to bottom. I tell people all the time, I lucked into this. I mean? Not a genius. I'm just the luckiest asshole on the planet. I mean? That's what I always say. So that's definitely our competitive advantage. There's a lot of risk mitigation there because we control it from top to bottom. I mean? I can screw up a lot and it doesn't cost that much. I mean? Ask my dad. There's plenty of failure here, but in that failure, if you can learn, and that just, and the competitive advantage can be as simple as as you know what I mean? Well, I'm just going to outwork everybody.
Yeah, sure.
That's a big competitive advantage, you know what I mean? Because I know a lot of people that want a lot of things and they don't want to work for it. You know what I mean? And so my argument is don't sell yourself short, know at least realistically what your goals are, and then know the sacrifices that will have to be made to make that happen. And
but that's business, right?
It is business.
No matter what.
Absolutely.
So, let's say you didn't have all the advantages that you've got, because you've got, you're right, pretty good. Pretty good hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
To start this, you could have just kept on going on with the corn side of the business, the grain side of the business, and been just fine. And then this, even better, plus your attention to detail. So you already had a solid foundation.
Absolutely. Yep.
So someone thinking about starting a distillery, that doesn't have the same advantages, would you say, hey, that's where like an MGP makes sense?
Yeah.
And is that something where you should go partner with local farms?
Well, doesn't this? I mean, the answer's already in the pudding, right? And that this is what everybody else does. They just source, and they just source because these companies make great whiskey, and it's really hard to make
hard.
Great. It's incredible. It's incredibly hard. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I will throw myself 100% under the bus because everybody tries to make this place about me, and I am the face. You know what I mean? I'm the CEO and the Master Distiller and all that goofy stuff. But like, and my dad would stand here and be like, "Oh, it's Jason. He did all this." But like, you know, I'll be honest. I think if I did not have that support network and the hand that was dealt to me by once again some of the best, hardest working, like most incredible Americans you ever met, I think I would have fallen on my face. Do you know how much growing up I did in the last 10 years? You know what I mean? Of like, no one's coming.
At the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah. There's no one is coming to save me. Does that make sense? It's literally, if there's a mess, I clean it up. Like there's a lot of growing up that I needed to do when we started this. And if I didn't have those resources and I was like, as you said, just stepping back, I think I would have fallen on my face completely. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, man, so my advice is, you know what, if you, I think it goes back to what we were just talking about before, that Warren Buffett, if you can actually realize that, like, if you put in the work today for the things you want tomorrow, you can have the things you want tomorrow because you've done the work in the past. And we all know that as adults, it's discipline, it's all these things, but it takes having kids and growing up and like having people dependent on you. You know what I mean? Like I pay all my siblings, like, you know, like I pay my parents, you know what I mean? Like all that is on me. And I like that, you know, and that's a part of my personality. Like I like risk taking. That's not for everybody. You know what I mean?
You know, to be fair, you can take a risk because, you know, there's
exactly
a background.
I do have a safety net that,
there, you know.
I always tell this story. I think we can end this question here. Like so they always ask us, like when we have, you know, big guys, big representatives from, like, you know, the big three and, you know, like people always ask, they're like, man, how did you do it? Kind of like what you're asking here. I always tell people this, like when you borrow the kind of money that this started, that first of all, you never knew you had. Like we don't come from any money whatsoever. So when we borrow millions of dollars from the guy you love and respect most on the planet, failure is not an option. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like that's
your motivator.
You just work, absolutely. Yeah. You just work through it.
Everything.
I guess like in my 20s, you know, I'd hear these people be like, oh, you need to put yourself in a position where failure just isn't an option. Like, you know, if you fail, you're done. And I was always like, you know, and coming from a guy that has literally the most incredible parents, the best family, like that never made sense, right? Because world's biggest spoiled asshole, right? Never knew it. And then once you get put in there, you do realize, like, when you get back into a corner and it's time to deliver, I mean, don't get me wrong, you're going to fail, but like if you stay disciplined and focused, you will, like, the results will come, you know what I mean, which is super cool.
So then the profitability of a distillery, that's, right. So not a sure thing?
No, I mean, definitely not. I mean, we're as profitable as anybody with being vertically integrated. I mean, we have that, but I laugh. Like, it's just, it's very reminiscent of the family business we already have, which is agricultural. So it's enormous sums of cash and no margin. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it just costs so much of barrels, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in barrels a year. Like, and then you're sitting for 4 years, you know, it's a long play. It's a very conservative business, which is interesting because that's kind of like agriculture as a whole, you know what I mean? You're kind of betting everything on weather that you can't control and everything else. And I'm betting, you know, I always joke, like I'm slowly, which is not a horrible thing, by the way, could be the best thing, but I'm slowly turning into my dad, right? Like all I watch is the Weather Channel on like the Chicago Board of Trade all day. Like, what's corn at? What's going on? You know what I mean?
My grandfather used to do, the Board of Trade.
Oh yeah. And we just, I laugh like, how is this happening? Like I've fully regressed, you know, but it's to that point, like I think that you just have, you know, it's definitely, I mean, look at how many people make good bourbon. It's not very many people, you know what I mean? Look how many people source good bourbon from like the 3 or 4 good people in the industry that make it. Almost everybody. Yeah. So there is a, man, and maybe I'll even I'm always throwing myself under the bus, but this is a good one where like my pride could have been my downfall in this is like I never wanted to source, and we haven't. We've never sourced a drop. Not saying we won't ever. I don't want to. You know what I mean? I used to 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago when we first met. If you would have told me that, I'd be like, "We'll never source." You know, I mean, just this pride, ego.
But now you understand the business more.
I do understand the business more, and sometimes there's things you want to do that aren't necessarily, you know, farm to bottle bourbon is what we do. We'll never get away from that. But, you know, there's other business opportunities and other little segments where I'm like, oh, well, this is like somewhere where I see something that's needed, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, well, maybe, well, I don't want to take away from the production and the quality of my farm to bottle spirits. So, you know, so I'm always very...
like others. Spirits that you might want to make.
Yeah, exactly.
Or wouldn't come from what you've got.
Yeah, or you know, like or it's more like seeing like friends in the industry, friends here in Indiana that, you know, started out wanting to make and they're all sourcing now, and I completely understand. You know what I mean? And I support them 100%. I'm like, I'm with you. You know what I mean? I'm just, once again, world's biggest spoiled butthead in that, like, I don't have to do any of that stuff. You know what I mean? And I've had the, you know, had the fortune to be blessed with, you know, the ability to not have to do that. So I always take that very much with a grain of salt. Does that make sense?
So, you know, going along with that, you know, so how have you grown and learned and improved? You know, it's 10 years, right? I mean, you're a decade into it.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, when I first met you,
it's probably 6 years ago.
It was before COVID.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Like COVID wasn't even a thing yet. And then, you know, we stayed in touch. Yeah. You know, and then I got to see a lot of this stuff happen. I was super excited with the bottled and bond. I remember you were saying the bottled and bond, the bonded products were going to come. Yep. And you were explaining it to everyone. So, you know, so obviously you would have learned a lot in these past 10 years and maybe changed your approach a little bit. Maybe you didn't. You know, you've had, you know, more conversations with your dad about like, hey, how did this work out? You know, did I do this right? You know, where can I improve? In your family, you know, I know Karen, right?
Sister.
Was that your wife's name?
Kaylee. You got it right. Kaylee. You were close. Yeah, Kaylee.
Yeah, I was close. I haven't seen her in 3 years. So now it's on YouTube for everyone to know that.
It's all right. I will play that for her and she will chuckle. It'll be good.
So, but you can see, like, if you're on the bottles, you can see the K.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You know, the KF, the JF.
Yep, we sign all the bottles. It's all family. Exactly. Yep. So
how have you grown, learned, and improved?
So one of the things about distilling that is really kind of speaks to my soul is, like I always say, like a distiller, like somebody said this to me once and I just thought it was great, and he's a great brewer, and he said brewing is 90% sanitation and 10% inspiration. And distillation is 90% inspiration and 10% sanitation. I was like, man, that's really kind of like the coolest way I've ever explained it between brewers and distillers. We're kind of, like, I think if you're an actual distiller, you're kind of an efficiency Nazi. Does that make sense? Like, you're like, oh, how can I do this better? Or how can I do this better? And you're always trying to push. So we've, you know, efficiency-wise, over the last 10 years, we've definitely done that. You know, like last year we almost tripled production, you know, and basically tripled production. I want to go to 25% more than that this year, you know, because just our demand is so out of control. Like, I'm trying to keep pace, but at the same time, never compromise quality. Does that make sense? Like, we don't, that's just something I will not.
And all of your barrels are spoken for like foreseeable future.
Yeah, we are sold.
There's no more single barrels to be reserved.
Give me a couple years and we'll be good to go. You know, I mean, it's not a decade. God, that would be, you know, and it's already bad enough.
But 2 years is still good.
It is a couple of years. So about 2026, I think we'll start taking single barrel picks again. You know what I mean? So, it's just that efficiency. And just, you know, learning things that you did dumb that are more efficient, and technology to help you get a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like,
what kind of technology?
So, I mean, we always had automation. We have a pretty sophisticated still, but just using tech. So when we built,
which is a cool story.
The
still story is very cool.
Oh yeah. So I always say this. So once again, going back to Dad and giving him all props. Like, I told him kind of the outline of what I wanted. We run, I mean, most distilleries our size probably have 20 to 30 plus employees. It's me, my 3 siblings, my parents, and the grandkids that help. That's it. There's nobody but family.
Efficiency is key.
Efficiency is more than key. And I built this business to be super efficient. Like I knew, like really day to day, like, I mean, and my siblings are friggin' awesome and fantastic. They are, anytime I need a hand, if there's bottling to be done, everybody kind of has their roles and they all do them really, really well. But day-to-day production is, you're looking at him, you know what I mean? And that's something that I probably, once again, on efficiency, I need to improve, like let some things go as far as, but I'm just such a control freak, you know what I mean? Like it isn't, but you know, basically efficient. Like we've added some technology. We have a crazy glycol machine out there now that is, you know, it's a big chiller, so that just helps on efficiency. So we threw that in right at the beginning of COVID. So 2020 is when it came in. Yeah, that's one of our issues with distribution right now. So in 2020, we put that machine in. We blew up our mash tank, and for 8 months, I have an 8-month hole next year where I have 0 product.
Oh wow!
So that's just how it is, you know what I mean? And we'll backfill. It's not like we haven't seen this coming. We knew what was coming. So there are other things which, you know, you have to flex and be, you know, basically just you know, figure out what you're going to do next. And it doesn't change. People ask me all the time, you know, oh, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, you know, I mean, I'm not a wizard. I can't make 4-year-old bourbon appear out of nowhere, or we would be doing this podcast on my private island. You know what I mean? Not when it's snowing outside.
Yep. I know. This is crazy.
Yeah. So
but all week it's going to be in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, exactly. It's coming. It's fighting. It's fighting off the last bits here. But I think you know, really efficiency and just getting better at what we do is probably what we've done. But also in the vein of always making sure we stick with what, you know, that farm to bottle, growing the grain, staying to what we're doing, you know, better relationships. You know, we got some cool stuff with Beck's Hybrids, which is the largest family owned, like, you know, seed company in the world. That's all put together because of Purdue, which lost to the 16th seed in the tournament last night. And is horrible.
Yeah, saw that. You okay, buddy?
I'll be just fine. I had him losing in the next round because I just wanted to jinx it. So I jinxed it all right. So yeah.
I'm going to leave that off the video because, wow, my thoughts on that. I mean, I have no dog in the fight, but I was with a friend who's a Purdue grad. And he's like, man, you know, just being a Purdue graduate, we're so used to this. Oh, exactly. Every time. And I'm like,
yep, exactly. It's well, you have to understand being from West Central Indiana. So, you know, Purdue, huge ag technology school in the Big Ten. So we don't have billion-dollar football programs. Like it's just you know, if we have a Drew Brees that comes through and we get lucky, we're as happy as can be, and it's like going to happen once every 100 years, you know. And then we're all Cubs fans. So we're used to constant letdowns because that's, and the reason that a lot of people don't understand why everyone in West Central Indiana and like is, so back in the day when I was a kid in the 80s, the only channel you got over it was WGN. So we watched the Cubs. We're all religious Cubs fans because that's all we watched all summer was Cubs games. You know, listening on the radio with my grandpa. So we're used to constantly being let down. So
it's all good.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. That was part 1 of the interview. There's a second part coming. I hope you enjoyed it. Jason's just a fascinating guy. It's really interesting learning about the business side of this, how they got started, how they worked with their mash bills, and we've got more coming. Stay tuned. That should be coming in the next couple weeks, and I'm excited to share it with you.